Hello and welcome to Health, Healing, and Happiness. I'm Will Michael and I'll be your host. Health, Healing, and Happiness is a show intended to bring to the people of Helena people, practices, and practitioners that contribute to the health, healing, and happiness of each of us. This evening we're pleased and honored to have with us Patrick Marsolek, clinical hypnotherapist. Patrick, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to have a conversation with you and talk about our favorite topic, hypnosis and hypnotherapy, and how that works with people. Even though you've been our guest before, I'd like you to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what brought you to hypnosis, and we'll kind of just have a conversation around that topic.
That's great. I guess I came to hypnosis out of my own inquiry early on in my life, wanting to know more about consciousness and how my consciousness worked, and I started meditating, and later on in life met a fellow who was a mentor to me, who was a hypnotherapist and an author, had written some books on hypnosis, and he kind of got me more specifically interested in hypnosis particularly, and my interest in it has certainly continued, partly because of how it's, I guess, expanded my awareness of what consciousness is and how our consciousness works. And so I've been practicing with my own practice for 8 years now, and I've written a book and produced CDs, and I do a lot of teaching, self-hypnosis classes and lecturing around Montana.
Yeah, that's very similar in many ways to my experience. In terms of, the part about coming to hypnosis after having done some meditation and exploring that avenue, and for me it was the initial contact with meditation was, I put it in a historic perspective of the era where a lot of gurus were coming to America to teach meditation, and they saw it as a time that was, people were more open to those ideas, and but I was in school and working on a PhD in counseling psych, and in order to explore some of those things, I realized I needed to look at some kind of a Western link to those concepts, and decided to start exploring hypnosis because it was more of a acceptable kind of thing, and the American Medical Association had accepted hypnosis as a viable treatment modality, and so it made it easier, and it also, I found that there was such a large amount of information that could be gleaned in terms of, just like you're saying, teaching people how to do those things and how to meditate, understand their subconscious mind, understand how to communicate. So let's talk about your book. I know that you completed the book, what, a year ago or so?
Yeah, it's been out for actually a year and a half now. And I have more works in progress, but this one came out of classes that I was teaching on self-hypnosis, and I really wanted just to make a manual or a guide that would just be every step by step how people can have those kinds of experiences for themselves. And that's kind of a theme of the teaching, and even a lot of the one-on-one sessions that I work with people. There's still a lot of teaching, people dispelling. We can talk a little bit more about beliefs and expectancies people have about it. But so that it involves just some basic techniques you can learn, some of the basic structure, what hypnosis is, how it works, how you can use it then for therapeutic use. And the book comes with a CD that has some audio people can listen to have guided experience and start to learn about how to do that for themselves.
I think our viewers probably would benefit from understanding. I mean, I think it's basically understood that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis in the sense that the person needs to be following. I mean, as a hypnotherapist, we give guidance and suggestion, but the individual still has to be willing and able and to make the suggestion to themselves. In other words, they're on the front line of their consciousness, so that it's important that while we both know that some people don't necessarily come in looking for developing a skill, it's important to know that it is a skill. And
yeah, well, I mean, that's something we could talk about at length, I think, and it's worth talking about if anyone's interested in hypnosis in terms of how does it work. How much do you need to know? How much do you need to be, on top of your intentions or your expectancies? Because those all play a role in how well someone responds to hypnosis. Mm-hmm. And I think we've talked about that before, you and I, that when someone comes to see me, I spend some time asking some questions, and talking a little bit about what do you think it is? Do you believe it's about loss of control or losing consciousness, mm-hmm. which are common kind of perceptions people have. And so we talk a little bit about typically is not that way. It can be if you want it to be, but I haven't found that to be therapeutically beneficial, so that's not the kind of hypnosis I'm interested in practicing. And that it is about self-empowerment, and that you can learn to shift your consciousness in a very intentional way and really get into some very profound, call it altered states of consciousness, but you can do it in a very empowering way, in a therapeutic way.
Right.
So you can really gain control over yourself. And that's one of the things that one of the reasons why I think I've continued with hypnosis is my sense is as I've learned more about it, as other people learn more about it, it tends to be more empowering in terms of all the other trances in our lives, the trance of our society or our culture or your family of upbringing, that kind of empowers you then to decide, how do I want to live my life? When I can learn, I can shift one part of my consciousness, it kind of opens the door to this whole kind of transformation that you can really change or modify all these different aspects of ourselves that you may not even have been aware of.
Right. Yeah, I call that helping a person be at choice. I mean, I feel like, like you mentioned, a lot of our experience as human beings is our trance states, or it has been suggested to us in our forms of hypnosis. And the empowerment, I think, is the key to, the way we both practice. And I think people need to know that not everyone practices that way. I mean, that at least traditionally, when I first started learning hypnosis, it was done as a treatment that was doled out, and many of the techniques were actually suggesting that the therapist had the power. Things like, watch the tack on the wall or watch the pendulum, and the suggestions were around it suggested that the therapist was making your eyes tired, and the patter was doing the work.
You will lose control as this.
Yeah, and that was the suggestion, whether it was said or not. It was suggested, and then there's always those famous horror stories or Bela Lugosi movies, and there's a dual message at a stage hypnosis